All right, so today we're diving into something a little different, something pretty complex,
Okay.
where immigration policy and special ed rights kind of like collide. We've got this academic paper, and
Oh,
it's exploring what could happen to students with disabilities,
okay.
especially, the ones with IEPs, if deportations surge our sources. They suggest this might involve private prisons and a whole bunch of questions about what happens to these kids
hmm
and their right to an education in that kind of system.
It's really fascinating to think about, like, the real world fallout of these policies. This isn't like theoretical, you know.
Right.
This is about kids, vulnerable kids.
It is, yeah. It's heavy stuff. And the paper, I mean, it makes some pretty intense historical comparisons. Like, think Operation Wetback back in the 50s.
Right.
But on a scale we haven't seen, like in modern times, he
Wow.
talks about these vast holding facilities that they'd need to build
Yeah.
to handle this massive increase in deportations.
And this is where those private prisons come in.
Right.
Companies like GEO Group, Cora Civic, they're probably going to be the ones building and running these places.
It seems like they're already in a good spot to benefit from this policy shift.
Mm-hmm.
GEO Group, for example, they gave over $1 million to pro-Trump super PACs during the election.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you think about,
Yeah.
conflicts of interest and all that.
What's really worrying is
Yeah.
a lot of their contracts, they have these minimum payment guarantees.
Oh, wow.
So even if the facilities aren't full, they still get paid a certain amount.
So there's a financial incentive
It's
to keep them full.
It's kind of a disparaging thought that profit could be like a driving force behind these policies.
It really is.
And then there's the human cost. These detention centers, they're going to be filled with people,
Right.
people whose lives are being turned upside down, including children.
Right.
And like we were saying, students with disabilities, they're already facing so much.
They need stability, they need routine, and detention. I mean,
Yeah.
it throws all that out the window.
It's especially scary for kids with autism
Right.
and those with emotional and behavioral disorders, EBDs.
Right.
They have such specific needs
Yeah.
that would be so hard to meet in that kind of environment.
I was reading about the ICE raids in Mississippi back in 2019.
Oh, yeah.
It really hit me hard.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of kids were traumatized after they took their parents.
It's awful.
One story that stuck with me was about the 7th grader, Kerry Martinez. His whole life just got flipped upside down.
Yeah.
Imagine being that age and not even knowing if your mom's coming back.
Yeah.
Makes the impact of these policies feel very, very real.
Those raids, they're like a scary preview of what could happen on a larger scale,
Yeah.
the trauma, the separation.
So we've got this potential surge in deportations, and we know it's going to hit kids with disabilities especially hard. But there's another layer to this whole thing. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Right, IDEA.
IDEA.
Yeah.
Now, IDEA guarantees free, appropriate public education, FAPE,
Uh-huh.
for all children with disabilities.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what their immigration status is.
Right.
But the paper brings up this huge question. Will those rights actually be protected in detention centers,
Yeah.
especially ones run by private companies on federal land?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
And when you look at what the current administration has done with things like DACA,
Yeah.
it's not exactly reassuring.
Right.
They've tried to weaken DACA protections a bunch of times. It makes you wonder how committed they really are to IDEA.
Okay, so let's say a child with an IEP, they end up in one of these detention centers.
Mm-hmm.
Who's actually responsible for making sure they get the education they're entitled to under IDEA?
Right.
How does that even work in a place like that,
Yeah.
especially on federal land?
Yeah.
I mean, who's the LEA, the local education agency, in charge?
That's where it gets really, really messy.
Okay.
Figuring out which LEA has jurisdiction over a detention center on federal land,
Yeah.
especially if it's run by a private company.
Yeah.
It's a real headache.
So you're saying it could be like this jurisdictional nightmare?
It could.
Everyone pointing fingers, nobody taking responsibility.
It's possible.
What happens to the kids while that's going on?
Well, unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's a very real possibility. Local districts, they might try to say it's not their problem.
Right.
And the federal government, they have oversight.
Yeah.
But their enforcement of IDA in these places, it's often pretty weak.
And let's be honest,
Yeah.
private companies, they aren't exactly known for, like, putting special ed first.
Yeah.
Their main goal is profit.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a lot of incentive to invest in, qualified staff or resources for these kids.
I don't think you're going to find many teaching jobs on GEO Group or Core Civic's website.
Yeah. I don't think they have a careers in compassionate special education section.
Probably not.
Their focus is, well, somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because without qualified staff and the right resources, these kids are going to miss out on those crucial services.
And it's not just the lack of resources, it's also the transfers.
Yeah, constantly moving between facilities.
It's almost impossible for them to have any kind of consistent education.
Mm.
Their records often don't follow them. They end up losing services.
It's a recipe for neglect.
It really is.
Educational neglect.
Yeah.
And the consequences of that can be really severe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these kids are already facing so many hurdles.
Yeah.
And this just piles on even more complexity, more hardship.
Yeah. We're talking about a situation where these kids could be denied their right to a free, appropriate public education.
Right.
And let's be honest, detention, I mean, that's got to be traumatic for any kid.
Of course.
But for a child with special needs, it's almost unimaginable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The paper really digs into the challenges for students with emotional and behavioral disorders.
The EBDs?
EBDs, yeah.
Right.
These are kids who need, like, a really structured environment.
Right.
Individualized support, therapy. A detention center is basically the opposite of that.
It's almost like setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They're already struggling.
Right.
And then you put them in a place that's chaotic and stressful, and they don't have the support systems they need.
And it's no wonder they're more likely to have behavioral issues.
Exactly.
And those behavioral issues, they can escalate so quickly in a detention setting.
Oh, yeah.
Without the right help, the right support.
Yeah.
It can lead to more trauma, discipline, even isolation.
Which just makes the problem worse.
Exactly. It's this vicious cycle.
And it's not just the immediate impact, right?
No.
The paper talks about the long-term consequences of educational neglect in these places.
Absolutely.
Like what happens down the road.
Imagine like a kid with dyslexia.
Oh.
They have an IEP. They're supposed to be getting special reading help. Now they're stuck in detention.
Right.
Limited resources, no qualified teachers, maybe not even basic classroom stuff.
Yeah.
They're missing out on crucial learning time.
Right.
Their reading skills are going to fall behind.
And that impacts, like, their whole academic career.
It has a ripple effect, yeah.
It really limits their opportunities in the future.
Exactly.
It's heartbreaking
Please.
to think about these kids falling further behind
Yeah.
when they're already facing so many obstacles.
And it's not just academics.
Right.
There's the potential for lasting psychological harm, too.
Trauma.
Trauma, yeah.
Yeah.
The paper mentions studies showing that kids held in detention, they're at higher risk for all sorts of mental health issues.
Like what?
Anxiety, depression,
PTSD,
even suicidal thoughts.
It's like we're punishing them twice.
Yeah.
First, by taking them from their families.
Right.
And then by denying them an education.
Yeah, it feels so wrong.
It really does.
And the paper argues this isn't just about individual harm.
Okay.
It's about systemic injustice. Kids from immigrant families, they already face barriers to educational equity.
Right.
They're more likely to go to under-resourced schools, limited access to good early childhood education,
Yeah.
language barriers.
And deportation and detention just make those inequalities even worse.
It compounds the problem, yeah.
So it's like we're creating a system that almost guarantees these kids will struggle. And for those with disabilities, it's even harder.
The odds are stacked against them.
It's not like these families are choosing to be in this situation.
Right.
I mean, a lot of them are running from violence,
Yeah.
poverty, persecution.
Seeking asylum, a better life for their kids.
The whole don't like it, don't come argument.
Yeah.
It completely ignores the realities these families face.
The circumstances that force them to migrate.
It's such a simplistic response to a humanitarian crisis.
Yeah. And frankly, inhumane.
Okay, well, enough doom and gloom.
Right.
Let's talk about solutions.
Okay.
The paper does offer some hope.
Okay.
It outlines some steps that could be taken to, lessen the potential harm and make sure these kids' rights are protected.
The first thing, the most important thing, is to figure out who's in charge.
Okay.
There needs to be zero ambiguity about which LEA is responsible for providing education to kids in these detention centers.
So no more jurisdictional gray area.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this goes for any detention center, whether it's on federal land or run by a private company.
We need accountability.
Yes.
And once we have that...
Then we need strong oversight.
Okay.
To make sure those in charge are actually following IDEA.
So we can't just trust that credit companies will do the right thing
No.
just because,
They need to be held to the same standards as any other school.
Exactly.
And this oversight, it can't just be for show.
Right.
We need independent monitors who can investigate complaints, find violations, and enforce the law.
So it's about having teeth, not just bark.
Exactly.
I like that.
And it's not enough to just focus on the legal stuff.
Okay.
We have to address the human side of this too.
Okay.
We need to provide trauma-informed care to these kids,
Yeah.
make sure they have access to mental health services, create learning environments that are culturally sensitive, that use the right languages.
We have to remember these are children.
Yes.
Not criminals.
They deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
And that means meeting their needs.
Yes.
Giving them the support they need to heal and thrive.
And this brings us to another crucial point.
Okay.
Public awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We need to shine a light on this.
Yeah.
Share these kids' stories.
Challenge the rhetoric that's used to justify these harmful policies.
We need to remind people that these are real children with real lives.
Not just statistics or political pawns.
Exactly.
So what can our listeners do? How can they get involved and actually make a difference?
Well, there are lots of ways to get involved.
Okay.
First, educate yourself.
Okay.
Read the paper we've been talking about.
Right.
Research organizations that are working to help these kids.
Mm-hmm.
Follow the news.
Knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely.
The more you know, the better you can advocate for change.
Exactly.
What else?
You can donate to organizations that are providing legal help, educational support, mental health services.
Yeah.
Even a small donation can make a big difference.
It will adds up.
You can contact your elected officials.
Right.
Urge them to support policies that protect the rights of these children.
Let them know this is an issue you care about.
Yeah. Your voice matters.
Right.
Don't underestimate the power of a phone call or an email.
To your representative.
Exactly. What else can people do?
Talk to your friends and family about this.
Spread the word.
Share what you've learned. Encourage them to get involved.
Word of mouth is powerful.
The more people we can get talking about this,
Yeah.
the more likely we are to see real change.
Remember, these aren't just immigrant children.
Right.
These are our children.
Yeah.
They deserve our compassion, our support.
And our commitment to their well-being.
Absolutely.
It feels like we've uncovered a lot of troubling things here.
Yeah.
But also some ways forward, some things we can do.
Mm-hmm.
What keeps coming back to me is that idea from the paper, that these kids, they could become collateral damage in a system that seems driven by politics and profit.
It's real worry.
How do we prevent that?
Yeah.
What does real protection actually look like for these kids?
The paper argues that true protection, it goes beyond just, checking off the boxes of idea.
Okay.
It's about a fundamental shift in how we see these children, how we treat them,
Okay.
recognizing their dignity, their humanity,
Mm-hmm.
making sure their education isn't just, legally compliant,
Right.
but that it's actually enriching, empowering.
So it's not just about having a textbook and a desk.
No.
It's about creating a learning environment that's truly supportive,
Yeah,
inclusive, responsive to their needs.
exactly.
It's about giving them the tools they need to heal from trauma, to develop resilience, to thrive.
Academically, socially, emotionally.
Setting them up for success, not just survival.
Absolutely.
It seems like a tall order.
It is.
Especially, with the political climate the way it is.
Yeah.
And the challenges of working within a system that, often prioritizes just getting things done
Right.
over the well-being of the individual.
Over the needs of the individual child, yeah.
But I also sense this real urgency in the paper.
There is, definitely.
Like we're at a crossroads.
Yeah, I think so.
The decisions we make now, the policies, the actions we take,
It's going to have a huge impact.
it'll have a huge impact on the lives of these children.
Yeah, a profound impact.
So it's not just about what kind of education they get in detention. It's about the kind of future we're building for them.
Exactly.
It's about whether we choose to perpetuate this cycle of disadvantage or whether we choose to invest in their potential
Yeah,
and create a more just and equitable society for all children.
that's the goal.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to our listener.
Okay.
This paper has given us a lot to think about,
It has.
but it also leaves us with this sense of responsibility.
We can't just absorb this information
Right.
and then go about our day like nothing's changed.
Yeah.
This deep dive, it's a call to action. It's an invitation to really engage with this issue, to think about what role we can play in creating a more humane, more just world for these kids.
So what can our listener do? What are some real tangible steps they can take to make a difference?
Well, the first thing is to stay informed.
Okay.
Don't let this be a one-time thing.
Right.
Keep learning about the issues.
Okay.
Follow the news. Stay engaged in the conversation.
Make it part of your ongoing awareness.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
And then think about how you can use your own skills, your talents, your resources to be part of the solution.
Right.
Maybe you're a writer who can share these stories. Maybe you're a teacher who can volunteer to tutor kids in detention.
Okay.
Maybe you're a lawyer who can help families facing deportation.
Yeah.
Or a social worker who can advocate for better mental health services.
Maybe you have a platform, big or small.
Yeah.
And you can use your voice to amplify the voices of those who are being silenced.
Exactly.
So many ways to get involved.
If you're not sure where to start,
Yeah.
reach out to organizations that are working directly with these kids and families.
Okay.
They can give you opportunities to make a real difference.
And don't forget the power of your vote.
Right.
We need to elect leaders who understand these issues.
Yeah.
Leaders who are committed to protecting the rights of all children.
No matter their immigration status,
Your vote is your voice.
use it wisely.
Make it count.
This deep dive has been quite a journey,
It has.
and it doesn't end when the episode is over.
I hope our listener walks away feeling empowered,
Yeah.
informed, and ready to take action.
We can't afford to be complacent.
No.
The stakes are too high.
Right.
The future of these children, the future of our society, it depends on us.
On our commitment to justice, to compassion.
To the belief that every human being has worth and dignity.
Well said.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.